Hey, welcome back everyone to another video, and in this one we'll be attempting to build uh, a very basic build root image on actually a very old hardware. So what you just saw booting right there with the grub was the Via C3 system that I own. I've done a few videos about it in the past, and I have it connected to its serial port, so you can configure grub and of course Linux to output everything through a serial port. The VGA on this particular hardware is kind of a weird case scenario, so we are not using that, and we are just going through the serial port so that you guys can see everything nice and crisp. So it's running Magia 7, and the reason is that it's sort of the only distro at this point, only decent distro at this point, that supports i586 microarchitecture. Um, a lot of the other distros don't really do that, and some of them that do are very minimal in nature, something that it's too out of a comfort zone for me. I'll have to set up too many things. People love miniature OSs, but that's fine, that's their thing. Even Arch Linux doesn't support i586 anymore. So yeah, I'm just showing that I am running Magia 7, and that's the i586 variant. At times it will say i686 because things are confusing. And here's the CPU input for where it says via Nehemia, and that's a 1 gigahertz i586 i686 base CPU. Um, with a few important things missing, but the interesting thing is, so it has 512 megabytes of RAM, and the interesting thing, it's still not free of Spectre bugs. So yeah, even back then they were doing weird stuff with CPUs. But yeah, now I am just making the def config for Buildroot. I had everything set up, so that we can just start with the Buildroot def config. Now Buildroot is sort of a OS building script or a build system. No, script's a very bad word for it. It's much more than a script, and you can configure a bunch of things like you would in the Linux kernel using menu config, and that's what I'm doing. So I am using menu config for this, and again based on the ncurses UI, and it will just start setting up the menu config for us. Again, it's over serial, so it's text only. You can do very specific CPU selection, so that will modify your GCC flags according to that, and you can modify a lot of system configurations. I'm just going to make sure I use glibc and have wchar and C++ support enabled to build some additional stuff. It's not needed for the default configuration, but just in case if I wanted to add something later. But honestly, with that amount of time it's going to take, I'm not really looking into that. So yeah, just setting up a few more things, including the def config for the kernel and the type. Now I've set VM Linux here. This is going to be a mistake, as we'll find out later. So just something to keep in mind if you are falling around for whatever reason. And yeah, we'll exit out from here and we will start to build stuff. And also I'll just use ramfs linked to the kernel binary, so that it's just easier to test out. There's no image to write, just a single kernel file, and then I can boot from that, and it loads the init ramfs rootfs automatically, so don't have to take care of that. um, Yeah, so it's time to go and go through the whole build process. And Let's see how long it takes. So again, remember this, like 1 gigahertz, very poor IPC, very slow RAM, around 200 megahertz or something. RAM speeds like in single digit giga bits per second, so it's not very fast at all. And And there we go. So 1462 minutes and 43 seconds, and that is a full day with some spare change. So that's how long it took. From like my regular workstation, this would have been maybe an hour, including um, downloading the source. But yeah, this thing took a full day to again download and compile, and I'm surprised it did in 512 megs of RAM. I'm sure it just um, hanged at pace swapping continuously, but it did it. I'm happy. And now you can see the actual images. Here is the output folder directory, and yeah, I not sure what I wanted to do there, but there we go. So we have the VM Linux file and the rootfs.cpio, which is also linked to the VM Linux, so we wouldn't need that file anyways. And let's go ahead, try to emulate it on QEMU. First, we need to install it, of course. Again, Magia doesn't come pre-installed with QEMU, very few distros do. And we use URPMI on this particular distro. Although DNF is supported, it's kind of a work in progress, so I just tend to use the more legacy option here. Uh, yeah, I mean, for a long time, even on Fedora and places like that, YUM was very much supported, and DNF had its thing, and then they started like aliasing YUM um, for DNF, or the other way around. So when you call YUM, it actually ran DNF, and that sort of once Magia reaches that point, that's when you know to shift from URPMI to DNF. But even for like system updates, you require URPMI now. And yeah, I'll just wait around, let it finish, and we'll come back. So QEMU system i386, QEMU system i386, not i386. The KVM stuff isn't installed or working because it's a very old CPU, and it also non-Intel CPU didn't have all the virtualizations. But I find it hard to believe if Intel licensed that to them, which they haven't. And a few kernel command lines, including console onto the serial port. And here's our issue: is the VM Linux bit is not as such bootable, so it's loadable and bootable, not like directly executable. So even Gruff would complain for that, and I've spent much time. Again, this is edited, but I did spend a lot of time figuring that out. So we'll just go and create a BZ image, and yeah, that's what I'm currently doing. Make menu config will give us the configuration UI, and from there we can select a BZ image, and that shouldn't take a while because again we don't have to build the entire thing. It's just relinking things in the correct way that we have requested, so we are not going to build anything else. So yeah, just select BZ image, and that will be the bootable one. So BZ is the compression type, but also makes that bootable. Not that they are related or anything, but yeah. Um. Hmm. Not sure what else I'm looking for. I guess just making sure everything's enabled that I wanted to be enabled. Um, let's get out of here past me. Right, good enough. And now to run a quick make, and again I'm just adding time just because I'm curious. Shouldn't take much more, just relinking stuff. And that took a grand total of 8 minutes. And now you can see it's boot executable image, so that's all nice. And from there we can actually use qemu to emulate it and test boot it. Now there is some concern, that will be very slow, and indeed it will be. So you can see it's actually printing it out, and you can like see it print every single line, which is funny enough in itself. And yeah, just wait, and there it is, and you can see it booting. It will just take a long time to get to the login prompt, so I'm not going to wait that long. I will just kill qemu, and we will actually move to boot from the actual hard drive, and we'll boot it directly from grub. So that should be fun to figure that out. And yeah, so I think the first step is to copy the binary into the boot directory. So that should be simple. And looks like I've done that before. So we are just going to copy the BZ image one. As I said, I did try to boot the VM Linux one. Didn't really work out well, did it? So now simple reboot. Wait for it. Wait for grub to come up over serial again. Yeah, it's very helpful to set grub over serial so I can see everything. It's like so slow. It just takes a long time to even reboot. There we go. Now on grub, few commands to set things up. I not sure what the pager set command is used for, but um, just every example just had that, so I just followed the sheep. Setting the root device and partition. So that's the first partition of the first hard drive, and then our Linux image name, and that should be Buildroot. So if my past self can just speed things up along here. Buildroot, not BZ image. I knew I made that mistake. Buildroot, yeah. And a few command line uh, configurations, mostly just setting the console to serial so that it doesn't blank on us. And the baud rate 11.5 to 100. And we can now boot, because again, no rootfs, nothing, everything's linked to that single um, binary image. Not sure why I'm stopped to write that boot command, but there we are. And here it is, booting. Detects everything on the PCIe and stuff like that. And here we are at the login prompt. It was much faster this time. So you can see uname A should give us 5.4 or 5.6, not sure what I checked on that time. I think it was 5.4. There you go, yeah, 5.4.20. And you can see the CPU, that just to prove that I'm actually running on hardware via Nehemia. And that was the second revision of the via C3 core, 1 gigahertz, more or less on the clock. And yeah, so PAE. And there was another thing that was missing. Apparently it has MMX, but some builds then don't really detect that. But yeah, here we are, a full day to Buildroot on a out of date system. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.